This class is concerned with organisational buyer behaviour. I want to start by looking at the contrast between consumer buyers and organisational buyers, two distinct sets of buying situations. Buyer behaviour is influenced by a large range of factors, and there are two types of buyers: customers and businesses. So each of these will have their own agendas, each of these will have their own requirements, and we need to distinguish between these requirements in this session. Consumer behaviour, or buyer behaviour I should say, is the process of buying products or services by individuals or households for personal consumption. So quite simply, the individual buys for him or herself or for the household for the purpose of the enjoyment of the product, for the purpose of consuming the product. Organisational buyer behaviour refers to buying of goods and services from business to business. Goods are purchased for use in manufacturing, for example. And the products, the output of the manufacturing sector, is then sold, or are then sold on to the customers. So businesses buy products and services for use as inputs into their own processes, and they refine the products into different articles, different items, which they may then sell on to the final customer. A very brief example would be a company buying raw materials. So the raw materials are a purchase by the company, but the raw materials will then be refined by the company into some set of products which will be sold to the final consumer. Organisational buying is influenced by employees working for the organisation. Several people are involved in buying, and this is often referred to as the decision-making unit, DMU, the decision-making unit. So within organisations there will be perhaps specialist buyers. There may also be small informal committees or semi-formal committees where different managers meet and discuss requirements. They discuss how much raw materials will be required, how many components will be required. They may also discuss the quality of the components purchased and the behaviour of suppliers in terms of meeting their contracts and timescale, and so there may be several people involved in purchasing within the organisation, and that of course is quite distinct from the individual consumer. Individual consumer is an individual, one person making the decision. When we go to the shop, we decide whether to buy a certain product or not. We usually decide individually, or perhaps as a household with the input of some relatives and friends or whatever, but usually a small group, if not the individual. But within an organisation, it may be different. Consumer buyer decisions, as I said, are based on one individual, usually. It may be a small group. But a business must take into account cross-functional teams and departments who are responsible for making decisions. So different departments in a business may have an input into purchasing. The production department, the research and development department, even the distribution department, and so on. So different people, different departments and different teams will be involved in making the decision, or making some input into how the final decision is made. Each department will have specialist knowledge about particular purchases, and it's important to involve these people in the decision-making process. Over a period of time, companies build up an expertise in making certain products, and they will build up a knowledge of the product and a knowledge of the supplier. And it's important in decision making then as to whether to continue to use that supplier that the people within the business are consulted. They have an expertise. They have experience over perhaps many years of using the product and of using that particular supplier. So it's important that they are consulted. So within a business, there will be a process of consultation. There will be cross-functional groups, departments, and individuals, perhaps specialist buyers within the buying section, will all be asked to give an opinion about the size of the order, the terms of the order, the type of contract that should be issued, the reputation of the supplier, the experiences with that supplier in the past. Many factors will be taken into account before the decision is finally made. Now there's a difference, as I've been indicating, between consumer and organisational buyers, and we can skip through some of these just to draw up the distinction very clearly. For a start, the consumer buyer, well, purchase decisions are made by individuals or based on household consumption. So individuals make the decision to buy a certain product. It may be that the individual who makes the decision, as I said earlier, consults other members of his or her family or his or her set of friends to get recommendations and suggestions. For an organisation, purchases are made for meeting consumer needs and manufacturing of products. So the organisation is buying products, not for the products themselves, but to use the products to make other products which it can then sell on to the consumer. So the motivation for purchasing is fundamentally different. With the consumer, it's to enjoy the product. Buy the product, make the decision to buy the product and buy it and enjoy the product. For the organisation, make the decision to buy the product, then buy the product and use it to make something else which can be sold on to the final consumer. So with consumer buyer behaviour, decisions are made by individuals or by couples or by family units. In the organisation, many people may be involved in making inputs into the final decision. Different functions, different departments, specialists, employees with wide experience of using the product. Many people may be consulted, so it's a much wider base. The purchase decision may be by brand or reputation or recommendation, but little product knowledge. Sometimes consumers don't know the specific product, but they know the brand, and they trust the brand, they trust the reputation of the product. Or it could be the product is recommended to them by their friends who know the brand. It's by recommendation. So they may not know the individual product, but they know the reputation of the producer. And for the organisation, purchases are broadly based on specialist knowledge and technical requirements. They need to have a certain type of input, and having acquired that input, they may then manufacture the final product. Decisions are based on personal emotions and promotion tactics for the consumer. The product must make an impact on the purchaser. It must cry out to be bought. The purchaser, the consumer, must have a good reaction to the product. The consumer must want the product. And the process of wanting, that whole idea of wanting the product, is a function itself of the promotional tactics of the seller, making the product attractive for purchase reasons. So it could be attractive in terms of its price and its availability. So the 4 Ps or the 5 Ps or however many Ps we're using nowadays, the Ps come into play. the price, the place, the product, the promotion. And the product will be sold if the purchaser has a good feeling about the product. With the organisation, decisions are more rational. They have to meet criteria. They're not emotions. The purchasing department don't simply like the product and buy it. There must be a real want for the product. There must be a real need within the organisation for the product. The company must have criteria that have to be met in terms of price, delivery, the contract, and it must fit with their experiences and their overall requirements. So all the personnel within the business who come in contact with the product should be asked to contribute their feelings, their comments about the proposed purchase, the price, the delivery, the contract, and so on, so that the decision is more rational and more thought out. Perhaps customers tend to be a little more spontaneous. And that idea of spontaneity is that we do tend to make faster decisions when there's only one person. When we go shopping, we decide to buy the product. We may not decide immediately. We may walk off and go to a different shop and eventually come back and purchase it. Or we may leave it and come back in a week and purchase it. But generally speaking, our decisions to purchase or not to purchase tend to be speedier than for the organisation. Organisation takes longer to make decisions, and as I said, more people are involved. So there's a longer process of consultation and analysis and a lot more talking and discussion to be done before the decision is made to purchase. And for the consumer, the product is generally purchased for individual use. The consumer buys the product so that he or she may use the product. Whereas products purchased by an organisation are complex and are based on consumer usage. The products purchased by organisations are not purchased as final products for the company. They're purchased as intermediate products, the vast majority. They are inputs into the production process. When they buy paper to put into the photocopy machine or into the printers to print company documents. The paper is not bought to amuse the people working there. It's not a frivolous purchase. It's a purchase that contributes to the reputation and the image of the business. It contributes to the product. So raw materials are purchased not because they are nice in themselves, which they may be. They are purchased instead because they are going to be used as the basis for the final product which will be sold on. Now, organisational buying situations. Well, there are three types of buying situations that exist in business. In business-to-business buying, I should say. There are three types of situations here. Business-to-business is when one company buys from another company. It's organisational buying. The consumer, the final consumer, is not involved here. Only with reference to the products that are being made. But the purchase, for let's say for metals, one company to another, the metals are the metals. That is the product. It's only when the metal is being processed and changed and made into the final product does it become relevant to the consumer. But there are three types of situations in business-to-business buying. Time, cost and effort invested in the decision-making and purchase of a product depends on the product complexity and on the product features. Well, clearly time and cost are linked, of course. Time, cost and effort will be related to the complexity of the product. If the product is very straightforward, the cost of production will be will be less, will be cheaper. If the product is complex, there will be a lot of time, cost, research, engineering, discussions, drawings, prototyping. There will be many aspects involved, perhaps, in getting the final product ready for market. So, looking at purchasing items, the company will have in mind all of the time and the cost and the effort necessary to prepare the product bought in, to prepare it for the final market. Technical products require in-depth product knowledge and product specialization. Generally speaking, decision-making takes longer, and buying situations depend on product requirements and complexity. Very technical products take a long time. It takes specialist knowledge, and there must be also specialist knowledge of the market. Specialist products will be sold in specialist markets. So the whole process is complex. The complexity rests in making the product, which itself may be very complex, technically complex, and knowing what the buyers want may also be complex, because the buyers will be more sophisticated in terms of their requirements. They're requiring a technical product to do a technical job. Now, the organizational buying situations. Well, the first one is types of buying situation. Well, the new task buy. First time buying of a product or a service. Well, the first time we buy a product or a service, it's slightly scary. It's trying to work out if the product will be good quality, if it will be delivered on time, if it is suitable, if the right decision was made to buy the product. So there's a lot of concern within the organization, perhaps, about buying a product if it's the first time. It's quite an experimental, there's a risk involved, and as far as possible the organization will try to diminish the risk, reduce the risk, but at the same time it's the first time out for the product, so there will be all sorts of concerns. There will be in-depth research and information must be gathered about the product or the service. Certainly before the order is issued, the company will research the product to see if it's suitable, if it's going to fit in with what they do, if it's the right type, the right dimensions, the right specifications, and so on. So there will be a lot of research into the product, and the information gathered from that research will be compared with what they want themselves, what their brief is, what sort of product they require. The first time buy requires several people in the decision-making unit to make an informed decision. First time buying, generally speaking, within organizations, first time buying is done by a team. It's best done by a small team. Each member of the team contributing some points, some criticisms, some requirements, some caveats, some points to watch out for. So the team will then make a recommendation. There may be a meeting where they finally sit down to recommend or not recommend the particular product. But by having several members of the team consult and think about the product and research and look into it and gather information, and each one come to his or her own decision, it's felt that overall risk for the organization will be reduced as a consequence. So having a team making the suggestion is felt to be a good idea. Of course, certain criteria must be satisfied. Baseline criteria, for example, the product quality or the price, and the after sales or support services provided by the supplier. These are straightforward requirements, perhaps. It's what is over and above those that the team will look into. The suitability of the product within the context of the organisation. Will the product that's going to be bought in, will it fit with the existing production methods? Will it snugly fit in to the production system? And the quality of the product, which is mentioned here on point 4. The quality is still an issue. There's still a risk about the quality. The company may ask for samples and may test the samples and base its order base the order, I should say, on experience of working with the samples. So that's one way of trying to assess the quality. The second buying situation is a straight rebuy. This is when the product has already been purchased, perhaps in the past sometime, and now it's time to purchase it again. This becomes a routine rebuy of products from business to business buying. So in this case, the businesses know each other. They've had contact before, they've had contracts before to supply a particular product. They know what each company, how each company acts, and they know a little about each other, and so there is less risk involved in this situation. And in fact, companies could set up a routine rebuy plan. They don't even have to place the orders. They simply have a plan that certain amounts of the product will be delivered on certain dates in the future. So they don't even have to place the orders, which saves effort and time and so on. The organisation continues to buy products. For example, paper, cartridges for printers. A restaurant may continue to rebuy oil or produce from the same supplier. So a restaurant who uses oil in cooking oil, they may simply place a continuous order, an order that every week so much oil will be delivered to the restaurant. And in that way the restaurant doesn't have to continuously place orders and spend time shopping around and testing quality and so on. So straight rebuys tend to be straightforward. The companies have knowledge of each other and the risk has been reduced as a consequence. Once this process is in place and it's been used for a long period of time, then the suppliers will meet the expectations of the buyers. There will be an understanding between them. They may occasionally negotiate price and negotiate certain issues about quality of a certain batch that was delivered. Perhaps the batch that was delivered was not 100% good quality or whatever. There may be issues that arise from time to time, but essentially the companies will deal with each other because they have knowledge of each other and experience of dealing with each other. The next type is modified rebuy. Products need to change with changing customer needs and demands. The example I gave of the restaurant earlier, well, food, generally speaking, still requires certain inputs. So cooking oil in restaurants would be something which has been used over the years and it's unlikely to change. But for many companies making consumer products, consumer needs change, fashions change, ways of living change. So the products need to be changed, which means inputs that are purchased between companies. These inputs need to be modified and contracts need to be changed. So there is a modified rebuying. Customers may request for product modification or price negotiations or change delivery methods. There are all sorts of ways that the modification may manifest itself. The product may need to be changed. The price of the product may need to be changed. With changing market needs and changing market situations, consumer market situations, there may be a lot of imports of cheap products onto the market, which may mean that companies producing domestically will have to alter their prices, which will affect the amount that they can pay for the raw materials. So there needs to be some element of modification of contracts, and that should be factored in right from the outset. If companies don't take customer needs into account, then of course they risk losing the customers. So customer needs drive the whole process. The customers are the final purchaser of the product. But the customer is not just buying the product of the company, but it's buying the raw materials from other companies back in the supply chain. So the onus on the company producing the final product is to produce a product that meets the customer needs so as to sustain its position in the market and enable it to continue to buy components and raw materials from companies further back in the supply chain. And modifying rebuying requirements, generally speaking, involves wide decision making within the organization. The research and development personnel must try to keep the product at the forefront in the market. They must try to produce products that are attractive to the final consumer. So the research and development people have a big input, but so also have production, so also have distribution, and all of the various functions within the organization should contribute towards any decision to modify an input, any decision to modify the technicality of the product, and any readjustment of contracts or changes in requirements, purchase requirements, such as delivery times, the price of the product, or the nature of the product itself. So organizations have quite a complex process to undertake in this regard. So organizational behavior involves three factors: structure, who was involved in the decision-making unit. So that is essential for the organization to sort out who exactly is going to be involved in making recommendations to purchase a particular component or raw material or service. Who is involved? Well, what's the structure of the buying situation? The process, how decisions are made and how purchase decisions are established. What's the process? How do they undertake the process? When does it start? Perhaps it starts when the need for a particular component is recognized. It may start with the development of a new product within the business, a new product with different components, and the process starts there. So who's involved? Who is needed to make the decision? And then what is the process of getting this whole buying situation started? And also, the content. What information is required, and what are the decisions going to be based on? How does the company know if a decision is a good one or not a good one? All the decisions, if it's a new product that's coming into existence, a new consumer product, then all the components may be new. The raw materials may be perhaps ones that the company has an expertise in using, but all the machines perhaps will have to be retooled to deal with the requirements of the new product. So what information is required, and how should decisions be assessed? Let's look over these three parts in a little more detail: structure, process and content, because these are how organizational buyer behavior is developed in practice. And we'll start with the structure. Organizational buying does not rely on one person, but on a team, and this is referred to as the decision-making unit, as I said right at the outset, the DMU. And individuals in the decision-making unit make purchase decisions. However, the individuals who make the purchasing decisions, these are really recommendations. So the purchasing final decision may come from a small committee, a small grouping, perhaps organized by the buyers in the organization, depending on the size of the organization. Here, I think typically we're talking about a medium size, perhaps to a large size organization. So the buyers will ask for inputs, contributions from different parts of the organization that will deal with the product, the manufacturing side, the stores side, the distribution side, the research and development, and so on. It'll ask for inputs. What are their comments? What do they feel about the product? Is it suitable? And they may also share information about the price of the product. Does it make economic sense to buy this one? Or it may find there is a range of products on the market, a range of component suppliers on the market who offer essentially the same component at different prices. How do they judge the quality? So the decision-making unit is how decisions are made within the organization. And decision-making unit can be, as I said, very complex. It can involve a large number of people. It depends on the nature of the decision, and people with specialist skills are needed to take part in the decision-making process. So specialists are particularly prized. People with expert knowledge, perhaps workers who have long experience of making products and working with certain materials. But the decision-making unit can be complex. It needs to be managed, and the people calling the decision-making unit to make the decision, perhaps the buyers in this case, will have to have an expertise in getting the best out of the people who are involved in the decision-making process, getting their recommendations so that a good decision can be made. The decision-making unit follows 6 principles. Initiators. Well, these are the ones who acknowledge a purchase process. The initiators are the ones who say that the product is required. The company really ought to purchase some product. They're initiating the process. They're making a recommendation. The company needs this product. So the whole process starts with the initiator. The need to push the idea for the new product. This could be anything. It could be a computer system, or the use of a new database, or It could be a new machine in the production department, or it could be a new process of manufacturing something, or a new process of testing a product, whatever it is. So the initiators are the ones who recommend the product, who start the ball rolling. The users are the individuals who use the product. So if it is somebody recommending the adoption of a new database in the company, then the people who will use the database should be consulted. What's the learning curve for the use of the database? What will it be used for? Will it be more efficient? Will it save time? Does it have good interrogation? What's the storage requirements? Can it be networked? And how is it networked? And so on and so on. So the users need to be consulted. It's not just the people who think this is a good idea to have the product, but the people who actually use it should be consulted as well. Then you've got the deciders. These are the people with the ability and the authority to make decisions. So they need to look at what the initiators are recommending, take into account what the users have said, and try to decide, is this a good idea? Is it worth buying the database, or buying the new machine, or buying the new fleet of lorries for distribution? Is it a good idea? Or should the company wait, or should it look for alternative ideas? So the deciders are the ones who need to balance this. And it's perhaps a good idea for people to be involved who are not directly users of the product, who can look ahead from the outside and make a dispassionate view. You've also got the influencers. These are guiders and provide necessary information about decisions. Influencers are these are sources of information relating to the product which may influence the decision. Sources of information which suggest this product is excellent, or this product has been used by many companies and it's been a big success. Or it could be information to say that this product is dangerous, or this product is not reliable, or this product is not condoned within certain contexts. So the influencers may positively influence or negatively influence the decision. Then we get to the buyers, the people who purchase the product, and the people who are bound by contractual arrangements. This is where the decision happens. This is where information from the initiators, the users, the deciders, the influencers, all culminates. This is where it all goes to. It all goes to the buyers, who have to balance all of the arguments, all of the points for and against, and make a decision. So the decision-making unit is a source of support and help for the buyers, because all the information is flowing through. Sometimes the information may not be clear, and the buyers will have to use discretion. Sometimes the buyers will have to make a decision even though the information flowing to them suggests it's a good idea, but there are some issues and some problems, and so the information detracts from the attractiveness of the product. But the buyers are the people who have to make the decision. And there are also, of course, the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are members of the decision-making unit because they facilitate the flow and transfer of information. It could be secretaries, or it could be specialist researchers within departments, or it could be associates of one of the buyers who has been appointed perhaps to facilitate the whole exercise. The gatekeeper is the person who collates all of the information and collates it objectively and honestly so that the buyers may make that decision. So we've got different roles within the decision-making unit, different types of person within it, and we can identify each member of the decision-making unit as to what their contribution is and decide into which category they fit: influencers, buyers, users, initiators, or whatever. Now, carrying on the structure process sort of points we mentioned earlier. Well, with the process is the decision of making processes for organizational purchase decision making. The process is applicable for business to business. So what is the process of making the purchase? How does it work out in practice? How does the business set out its decision? The buyer must make the decision on the recommendations of the decision-making unit. But the process may be quite a lengthy process, depending on the complexity of the product. The buyer may also have contradictory evidence coming to his or her desk, which means the buyer must evaluate the contradictions to try and reduce the risk and to make a better decision. So the decision-making process it applies in all situations of business to business. There must be a process in place that turns the desire to have the product or the component or whatever it is, the desire to have it, into the actuality of having it. And that process is how it's done: placing the order, drawing up a contract, getting experts involved, getting the legal team involved if it's a contract, so on and so on. So there is a process, and that process must be clearly set out and clearly understood by both parties, the buyers and the sellers. The organizational buying situation influences the decision-making process. The situation of the organization in terms of its own structure. Who is responsible for buying? Does it have a specialist buying department, or is it the managing director or the chief executive officer, or who is it who makes the decision? It depends on the size of the organization. Smaller organizations, individual managers will have many more functions. An individual manager may be responsible for personnel, for the HR function, but also responsible for buying. It could be. It's a small organization. Large organizations, there is much more division of labour, much more specialization. So with larger organizations, the process needs to be set out. Who fits where into the buying process? And how important is the input of that manager or of that individual in the buying process? So for example, if the office requires new machinery, then should the transport section be involved? Should the transport manager be involved in helping to make that decision? Well, the answer is complex, because the answer is yes and no. The answer is no, for a start, because the person doesn't have an expertise in the requirements of the office, perhaps. The person has an expertise in running a fleet of lorries around the country. So his or her input may not be that valuable. On the other hand, it may be very valuable because as outsiders, they perhaps see the situation much more objectively. So the process and who's involved in the process needs to be clearly articulated by the business. The process involves steps or procedures that enable the business to make purchase decisions. It provides a structure for the DMU in making decisions. So the process, once the process has been agreed, and set out, then the contributions of the individuals in the decision-making unit will be fitted in together. So the process may be something like the initiators come up with an idea, they make the recommendation, then the managing director or one of the departmental directors calls a meeting to discuss the idea and would it be useful, gets immediate comments from the meeting from different managers and different line managers perhaps about whether this is a good idea or not, and then perhaps after all of that reflects on the whole process and then brings it forward at a higher level for more detailed discussion, and eventually there will be a process of analysis and research to examine the idea, examine who will be involved. Finally, if it's now felt worthwhile considering, then individuals within the decision-making unit will be asked to make contributions and final decisions will be made. So within the process is, first of all, the recognition of a problem. A problem must be recognized, otherwise there's no decision to purchase raw materials or purchase components or purchase software or purchase anything. There must be recognition that by purchasing this item a problem will be solved. It's necessary to determine the characteristics and the specifications and quantity of needed items. So having recognized the problem, then what's required? What are its characteristics? What are its specifications? And how much of the product is needed? If it's raw materials, then what are the characteristics of the raw materials? It should be copper strip, 3 centimeters wide by 5 millimeters thick. That's the characteristics, let's say. That's the specification as well. It's specified. And what quantity? Well, we need 2 metric tons. So now there's the recognition that it was needed, and now there is a clear statement as to the quantity and the specifications required. Now it's a question of searching the potential sources. Who supplies? Where are they located? Are they reputable? How long have they been in business? Is there any bad reports? The company profile could be looked at. Depends on the size of the order, but the company doesn't want to lose, place an order and lose because the supplier goes bankrupt in the interim period. So it's a question of searching about information about the supplier, see if the supplier is reputable and reliable. So it's a question then of the analysis of proposals. What exactly are the proposals? Well, the proposal is to buy, say, metal, to buy copper metal or whatever it is, and to buy it from a certain company. And the background research into the company is that the company is reliable and has been in business for a long time and are capable of meeting this and honourable behaviour. So based on that acquisition and analysis of data, the whole process can be evaluated. And the buyers or whoever's responsible within the organisation for the purchase can look into the selection of an appropriate supplier. And then there's the selection of the order routine. How should the order be placed, and if it's a repeated order, how should it be dealt with? The selection of the order routine indicates the confidence that the business has in the supplier and in the desirability of having the product. If it places a routine order, It means it trusts the supplier. It has significant trust in the supplier, and it also believes that its own market is relatively secure because it's going to have repeated orders for its output. Then it's a question of getting performance feedback and evaluation to run with the order and get feedback from the decision-making unit as to how the whole process has gone, what criticisms they've got of the process, what changes should be made, what refinements should be made, what improvements should be made. And that is a list of items that we can go through in terms of looking at the process. So the recognition of a problem. Well, a need for a problem that arises within the organization which begins the decision-making process. So recognizing the problem is where the whole issue starts, as I said earlier. Problems can be internal or external and require DMU and the decision-making unit to acknowledge them. So it could be an internal problem, a problem within the business, or it could be one of the supplier or of the market in general. So looking at issues, looking at the process means looking at the problem, recognizing the problem and recognizing where the problem exists, if there is one. The problem may be that there is a demand for a product in the market and the company is not meeting it, or is not meeting it effectively. That could be the problem. Internal factors could be the purchase of new machinery, and external factors can be the demand of customers for product modification. So internal factors, looking at internal issues, buying a new piece of machinery, or external, modifying the product to meet current customer requirements. Modifying a problem has implications for the salespeople, as the salespeople must ensure that the information about the product is put across to the consumers in a way that will not alienate them. It must be to the consumers' benefit, the changes that are made, and this must be effectively communicated. So the salespeople have a task of dealing with customers to ensure that they understand the changes in the product. The determination of characteristics, specification and quantities needed, as I mentioned earlier. Well, once a need has been identified, the decision-making unit establishes certain requirements. A decision will be drawn up stating what is required and the quantity required. So it's a relatively straightforward activity, simply looking at what is required, what are the characteristics of the product that's required, and trying to ensure that that is what is delivered. Within the process, there is also a review that's required to ensure that the product meets product specifications. It's necessary that the process that's undertaken constantly reviews the whole manufacturing process, the whole production process, to ensure that the product that's delivered at the end meets the specification that was promised and set out in the documentation. For example, new equipment, reordering of stock to manufacturing products. It must be the case that the product that is produced meets the specifications and the quantity of the items required is specified. So the process must incorporate this type of consideration. And it must also look for good sources of product and look at the qualifications, as I said earlier, whether the company's a new company, it's got a history, it's got a good history, if it's got a good trading record, if it's a reputable company. And information must be gathered about potential suppliers and about the product specification. And this enables the business to make a better decision. It knows more about what is available and who is supplying it. So looking for the right suppliers means that the organisation can gather information on product quality, price, standards, and it also meets the organisation's requirements. The requirements they've got in terms of how much they're willing to pay, what's the quality requirements the product must meet. So the whole process of search and evaluation is essential. So that process of gathering information and looking at the quantity of information required, the one we've just been through, that ensures that the whole process can go forward. If it fails here on point 3, if it fails on this point, then the process should stop. If the company can't decide how much it wants, if the company can't decide about the quality, and if its access to search and research within the market is limited, then it can't make good decisions. That means that the chances are bad decisions will be made. So a lot hinges on this particular point. Next is we've got the acquisition and analysis of proposals. Once suitable companies have been identified, they are individually reviewed to ensure they meet organisational needs. So, having identified possible suppliers, they must be evaluated to see if they meet the needs in terms of price, the quality, the procedures, the contracts, the delivery, blah, 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 blah. There's many aspects involved in this. So the company must be evaluated from every angle. Proposals are considered, and factors such as company image, reputation, product features, price and delivery methods are all reviewed. As I said earlier, it's important that the company placing the order with another company looks into its history, makes sure that it's got a good trading record, make sure that it's honourable, it deals with its customers fairly, honestly, openly. So this part of the process is also important. It gives the purchaser confidence to go ahead. So in-depth analysis is required. Individual suppliers will be reviewed by members of the decision-making unit. This may be something that the members of the decision-making unit already have knowledge of. They may know existing suppliers. Perhaps where the decision-making unit will be weak is knowing all of the potential suppliers, because there will be many in the market perhaps that the members of the decision-making unit will not have knowledge of those people, of those organizations. So it may be it falls to the marketing personnel who have wider knowledge of the market to offer information about potential suppliers, simply because they know the market, they know the situation that the product is selling in, and they know what competitors are offering, and they might know where the competitors buy their raw materials or their components, or who to deal with. So the decision-making unit can offer some information, but it may be limited because of wider expertise or the lack of wider expertise in the market. Members of the DMU may assess proposals based on different criteria and may pose a problem when finalising an appropriate supplier. So it may be that the members of the DMU are all looking at the information from different perspectives, and this may cause a conflict between them. The production manager wants a machine that will make life easier, produce more, be more efficient, easier to use, easier to train personnel, but cost more. Whereas the budget may then have to be adjusted, taking away some resources from a different department, and a different member of the DMU, of the decision-making unit, a different member of that will be upset as a consequence. So there may be wider implications in dealing with members of the DMU. As an example here, the accounts department may prefer a cheaper alternative, whereas production may have specialist knowledge about product features and prefer an option that is costly. So the production people will want the latest machine, automated, computer controlled, but the accountants want to save and think that a lesser machine will do the same task and perhaps not have the same functionality, but consider the extra functionality to be a luxury and not essential. So there may be issues between members of the DMU. They don't all necessarily agree. And the final decision may not be as clear-cut as was hoped for. So more reliance is placed on the buyers, on the final buyer who has to place the order and has to make the decision, because the DMU were split on several points and several issues. On a routine order, when appropriate supplier has been selected, information must be gathered, such as payment methods and selection of delivery options. Routine orders, well, how should they be paid for? Should they be paid for monthly, or when they're invoiced, or how exactly should they be paid for? And when should they be delivered? And quality control, how should that be implemented? And returns, how should those be dealt with? So there are issues there. Some products will require routine rebuy, in which case a delivery plan must be set up to deliver the products on a regular basis. So the items are received every Tuesday morning, or the items are received every first of the month. Some sort of scheme must be set up if it's a regular purchase. Performance feedback and evaluation. Well, regular performance reviews must take place in each department that was involved in the decision-making unit. Having made the decision and having procured the machine, or having made the decision about a particular supplier for components or particular services or whatever it was, the DMU still have a responsibility. They contributed towards the purchase of those items. So now they need to review how well that item is working, how well the process is working, and feed back any suggestions they've got as to how to improve the situation and what should be looked for in future decisions of a similar nature. All members must be satisfied with the services and products offered by the supplier. If the members of the DMU are not satisfied with what happens in practice, having gone through the process and having recommended a particular supplier, if they're not happy with that, then there should be some way of addressing their concerns, perhaps cancelling the order or renegotiating the terms of the contract. So there can be a formal procedure here for evaluation forms, and the evaluation forms perhaps completed by the departments, or it could be regular meetings, perhaps monthly meetings, where feedback is offered. But essentially, there should be something in the original agreement to enable changes to take place in the event of disappointment. Disappointment regarding quality, or regarding delivery, or perhaps price changes. Content. Well, content refers to the choice criteria in organisational buyer behaviour. Now, choice criteria, how should the choices be made? Choice criteria is used by the decision-making unit to help them evaluate supplier proposals. So, how should choices be made? What criteria should be used in helping to select the particular choice? Each individual in the DMU aims to satisfy a different criteria and aim to meet different needs within their departments. So the decision-making unit is made up, or could be made up, from people, as I said much earlier, from production, from marketing, from research and development, from distribution, whatever. So they're all coming at the problem from different perspectives. So they will have different criteria. They'll evaluate the situation differently. For example, a purchasing manager whose target is the reduction in production costs will favour suppliers who are cost effective. That seems fair. However, production managers may wish to have the best machine, may wish to have better quality tools, may wish to have processes within their department which are more streamlined and perhaps more computerized and more high-tech. So there are many issues to be considered. So the purchasing manager will have one set of criteria, the production manager will have a different set, and there won't be an agreement. So some criteria, some way of reconciling those different views needs to be worked out by the business. Whose perspective is most important and why? Similarly, a technical engineer would not be cost conscious since they are judged on technical efficiency. It's ironic that within businesses, individual departments will be looking for efficiency, will be looking for safety, efficiency, streamlined production, high productivity, but at the same time the company wants cheapness. They want to pay less for capital, they want to economize where they can, and so there's a tension between the two, and the DMU will reflect that. This has been a long video, so I suggest what you should have done, and what I'll make a recommendation that you do, is stop the video from time to time, go back over it, watch the slide number on the bottom right hand side, and make notes, and just generally go over it a few times, making notes as you go. But that's all I want to do in this session. I want to leave it at that and say thank you for watching. There's a source that I've used throughout the process. Thank you for watching.